I find it interesting that Dallas is on here because looking
Talk
at
about it.
Dallas, you know, light little 7 seed. Now you guys kind of mentioned earlier talking about Milwaukee, where you're like you go into the series, you probably have the best player, and that usually gives you a chance. And we've seen Luka do some diabolical things in the postseason. Right now, if the playoffs started today, their path to a title, first round OKC would be their first playoff experience. And then the second round, they'd go against the Clippers, who are historically known for fumbling the postseason. And that's the conference finals berth. And then you're only one series away from the finals.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a path. I do feel like there's a path, but I feel like when it comes to contention for them, they're kind of in that everything would have to go right tier.
To me, I feel like after the trades they made, I got to see like 12 more games. I got to get to that 15 game mark before I can really like definitively say. But my hope is that what we've seen so far, and they're beating the brakes off the Suns tonight, is that the trades they made improved their deficiencies, which was their front court defense was not good in all areas. Adding Gafford helps that a lot. It takes a lot of pressure off of a rookie in Derek Lively, who's been good. But then just imagine you're asking him to be that guy in the playoffs. Now you got Daniel Gafford, who's been a pro for a while, really solid at what he does, provides a lot of grit in that front court, takes a lot of pressure off the rookie so he can just be a good rookie, which is what he has been. But he doesn't have to be an amazing rookie, which is what he would have had to be for this team to make a decent run in the playoffs. And in PJ Washington, he's basically exactly what you would have wanted like a Grant Williams to be, but he's just way better. Better defensively, trust him more offensively, very versatile defender in the front court. Really love that pickup for Dallas. I think that was the move of the deadline that really made me like raise an eyebrow. Like, okay, that was a big time move right there. But the main thing is, like you said, Gabe, if they walk into any playoff series, you can argue they have the best playoff performer in the NBA right now. You can make a really good case. Even if he went into a series against Denver, you could say Luka statistically is one of the best playoff performers of all time. Jokic is too. Luka's right there too. You can really make an argument that they would walk into any series and they could easily have the best player in that series. So I got to see a little more, but my thinking is what we've seen so far in the first 4 games since the deadline is the changes are real. They're starting to get healthy, which has been another big issue. And they're like a dark horse contender, kind of like you said, Gabe. Like, as long as they don't see Denver in the first round, I could have some confidence in them making a nice playoff run, potentially into a conference finals. If they saw Denver in the first round, that's bad luck. You might be screwed because Denver's that good. But if not, if they play, like you said, OKC, or even if they played the Clippers, Luka has smoke for the Clippers, and I think they would match up pretty well with them this time around. The talent is there. Anything could happen at that point. So they're in that dark horse tier for me, where if matchups are fine for them, like you said, Gabe, I think they could win a series or two, maybe get to a conference finals. And once you get to that point, it's really anybody's ball game, especially because you have Luka Doncic, who will be one of the 2 best players in the series at worst, but most likely the best.
Yeah, their trade deadline was the biggest reason why I wanted to have them in this discussion, because they're one of the few teams where I could have looked at them and said they actually have the top end talent, and if they add their couple of right role players, there's a chance. Most teams are not in that category, but that's where the Mavericks kind of were for me. The biggest thing that I'm looking for now, outside of like you mentioned, Reek, let's see where they're at the next 2 to 3 to 4 weeks. How do they new guys continue to look? How do they continue to look on the defensive end? Obviously, very small sample size, including the All-Star break, but number 1 in defensive rating over the last 2 weeks. How much does that continue? Doesn't necessarily need to be number 1, but can they continue to be a top half, a top 10 unit on that side of the ball? Outside of that, they just need to be healthy. Kyrie obviously is the biggest part of that, but even from just a role player standpoint too, I think Maxi Kleba just continues to be really important for what they're going to do in the postseason. Probably not as much so as when they made their conference finals run a couple of years ago, now that they've got PJ Washington in. But even still, his defensive versatility and his three-point shooting is really important for them. And he's really struggled with that health the last couple of years. And even when he's been healthy, he hasn't quite been the same. Last little stretch of the season, last 3 to 4 weeks, looking a little bit more like his old self. And that's something that they're going to need as well. If they can have him going, they can have PJ Washington going, they have Gafford and Lively. That's by far and away a million times better than any other front court they've had the last few years. Throw Kyrie into the equation with Luka. Pretty tough team for anyone to beat. They're still lacking a little bit of quality on the wing that I would like to see from them, specifically at the 3 and the 2 spots. Like, Derrick Jones Jr.'s had a good year. He's not great. 3-point shooting in the playoffs could end up being a problem. Teams might leave him open. Started the season really well shooting from there, but I'm thinking most teams are going to be happy if Derrick Jones Jr. is the reason that they lost to the Mavericks. Josh Green, similarly, he's been very efficient again, but not exactly the biggest wing. Tim Hardaway Jr. has been fine offensively, but we know he's not exactly great defensively. So they're a little bit pick and choose in terms of how they want to play on that end from those positions, whether they want the defense of Derrick Jones Jr., whether they want the production of Tim Hardaway on the offensive end. That's the biggest spot of concern for me, but there's a lot to like. And Luka's Luka. I mean, we've talked about that plenty, and we know what Luka's going to do. So I think they're on the fringe right now. They're basically in a to-be-determined spot for me over the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll probably see by mid to late March where they're going to land. But they definitely have a shot, and I would have never thought they were going to be in this conversation pre the trade deadline.
Real quick, Gabe mentioned earlier, like, how Jokic just elevates talent that's around him. Luka does that similarly too, and I think they'll be able to get away with like Derrick Jones Jr. getting more minutes in the postseason if they have to, because when you're playing with somebody like Luka, you just always seem to, get easier looks, and I think they'll be able to like put him in positions to where, if teams are just leaving him open, they'll be able to like mitigate that in a way.
He's a
like,
very good cutter, which helps that too.
Yeah, maybe use him more in like ball screen actions a little bit, especially if you got Gafford on the backside now or Lively, whoever it is. If you have PJ Washington on the court too, like just thinking about different lineup combinations. I really wish they still had Reggie Bullock. If they had Reggie Bullock still, that would have been perfect because that's the bigger wing that can defend, knock down shots. But I think they'll be able to figure it out. It's just a matter of what, like you said, the health. I didn't even think about Maxi Kleber, but he's another big piece too. But just being healthy fully and seeing how this next month stretch of basketball goes to see if this is the real deal or not.
Yeah, they might be a team who kind of suffers from success too. Just looking at the standings right now too, you want to see them get hot and kind of go on a run and really build momentum towards the playoffs. But right now, they're only a game back of New Orleans and Phoenix, and then after that, they're a ways away from Denver. So there's a real chance that if they get hot now, that they end up in that Denver 4-5 matchup.
Nobody wants that.
That's, to me, is like, yeah, it's just not your year. So I would be more leaning like it's probably not going to be their year because either they're not getting hot enough to get that high or they're getting that high and they're facing Jokic in the first round. So I really feel like it's not this year, but
the way I see it, they're probably going to have to bite the bullet of either facing Jokic in Denver or the Clippers. And neither one of those are great first-round matchups. But you're going to have to see those teams at some point anyways. So maybe it's best to see them early while maybe they're still ramping up a little bit. I don't know. Like, you're going to have to see them teams at some point. I don't want to be in the play-in, though, because Lakers, Warriors, Sacramento's a team that when they're playing great, like they're a really tough team to beat. So I wouldn't want to see any of those teams in a play-in matchup because playing is so finicky. Like, you might be the 7th seed, but then you lose one, and it's like, damn, we have to win. And, oh, God, Steph Curry's coming into our building. LeBron and AD are coming into our building. That's nasty. I don't want that. I don't want to see that. So they just might have to bite the bullet, get the top – hopefully they get into the top 6, and then it's like we either see Kawhi or we see Jokic in the first round. Neither one is great. Nobody wants to see those guys in the first round. But the way the West is, there's a good possibility that a team that we're talking about maybe being contenders might have to see another contending team in the first round.